Alright, I'm tying up some zebra midge, or CDC zebra midges. And right now I'm on the number 18 with 3mm tungsten bead. And yeah, so I'm gonna get started. So it's always a pain to start these slotted beads on the check or curve, as if dropping the hook wasn't bad enough. This is a lot easier to find. And talking's a lot easier with the wire out of my mouth, so I'm going to leave it there. But starting, really whenever I start any slotted tungsten bead, I invert the hook. But it's a lot more finicky on these check hooks. It wants to spin on you, so you've got to be super consistent on your thread wraps to lock it in without building up just a massive thread dam. And I quit using countersunk beads years ago. It just no longer made sense, considering I buy beads by the 1,000 per color per size. And honestly, I've gotten to where I prefer the look of slotted beads on non-jig hooks. It's almost a cross between your standard countersunk, your standard jig bead, plus it's got that look of those inverting, jig off, whatever you want to call them, those beads that sit up on the shank. But that's enough about the bead. I've spent enough time looking for it. I don't need to talk about it constantly. I don't know why I'm picking up the CDC either. So I'm just going to add a whisper of, not a whisper, this is more like an inside voice worth of dubbing to go under the CDC collar to keep it propped up, but also give it somewhere to sink into. Now that I've got the inside voice applied, I'm going to uncord my thread, grab the CDC feather, and I've already gotten 2 flies off this feather, which if you've watched my CDC tutorial, split thread tutorial, I went in to that as one of the benefits to it, just getting multiple flies per feather. Or at least I think I went into it on 1 of 4 takes. It's all a blur at this point. Then again, my entire life's been relatively a blur. And that includes, well, I won't get into the good and bad decisions I've made. Okay, back to the fly. So I've trimmed the portion of the CDC feather that I needed, and I went ahead and uncorded, flattened out my thread, and magically split it with my scissors. And now I'm just gonna record it, record it, record it. One word, all the meanings. Yes, I'm aware they're spelled differently. But again, back to the fly. This is gonna happen a lot. Well, the fly's almost done, but So I go ahead and add, now I'm adding a literal whisper of dubbing, and this bit of dubbing is just going to protect the thread base where the CDC is corded up in, and it's going to act as a transition between the corded thread and the thread that I'm now uncording to knot. Because if I would have done the whip finish while that thread was tightened up, I would have most likely snapped it. And if I did not include the dubbing, when I went to uncord my thread, I would have been uncording the very end of the CDC loop. So I just really like to have that dubbing there, and it also gives just a little more cushion between a fish's tooth, or plural toothuses, and the whip finish. And as you see, I didn't use any head cement, resin, or anything like that. And honestly, if you've got a good bit of dubbing right behind the bead that allows you to sink the knot in, you're never gonna have that fly come undone at the knot. At least that's been my experience on both the flies I fish and the flies I sell. I've had many praises on durability, never had a complaint that a fly has fallen apart, much less, again, at the whip finish. And I started to avoid head cement out of pure laziness, but at this point, I've just worked around tricks like this to actually make the fly durable to support my aversion to effort. Because I don't like effort. I like easy. Speaking of cushion, I like cush flies. But unfortunately, those take effort to make cush. Goodbye.